5 years of hard work and researching has finally paid off at the Canadian Museum of History. The new Canadian History Hall officially opened on Canada Day, and Prince Charles and Camilla were there. With the new hall, Canadians will be able to walk through 15,000 years of history, from Aboriginal schools to the Quebec separatist movement.
Now, the Canadian History Hall, of course, has a lot on the Aboriginal culture, because let's face it, this has to do with 15,000 years of Canadian history. However, in more recent times, Quebec has seen a fair share of controversy with wanting to leave Canada, and well, that is shown here in this section of the hall.
The new Canadian Hall at the Canadian Museum of History in Gatineau, that covers a span of 4,000 square meters, does not only provide a look at 15,000 years of history, it also shows some of Canada's darkest movements, including Quebec separatism in the 1970s and 90s. From oui and no pins to puppets of Jean Chrétien, the exhibit details the tense atmosphere Canada was facing. The Canadian Museum of History is known for its Aboriginal displays, and that continued to be shown through history from when they first arrived in Canada until the residential school disaster. The voices of Indigenous people echo through the hall, sharing their devastating stories of the blood-shedding conditions they faced. Artifacts from stone carvings to canoes and teepees are on display, as well as some traditional Aboriginal clothing.
Now, whenever many people think of history, they think of the past and not more present times. However, here at the Canadian Museum of History, in the Canadian History Hall, history is also shared the shattered memories of the Afghan War just a few years ago.
In order to get a clear picture of the history that has impacted Canada, you also have to reflect on more modern times. When the World Trade Center collapsed on September 11, 2001, Canada was immediately involved in fighting in the Afghan War. Since 2002, 159 Canadian Forces personnel were killed while protecting our nation. The exhibit shows some of the rough conditions Canadian soldiers faced, not only on the battlefield, yet also with their accommodations. And as you walk through the hall, you can't help but be truly inspired by the country where you live. Although Canada has seen its fair share of struggles like any developed country, we have always found a way around it. The museum's display, however, is quite different compared to what used to be there.
Now, for anyone who visits the museum, they are going to notice a lot of changes if they haven't been here in a couple of years. However, one thing stayed the same, and that's the church.
The church that has been in the museum since 1996 was erected in 1907 in Smoky Lake, Alberta. It has historical significance because Ukrainians in Canada turned to their faith as a way to look for hope in their new life in Canada.
Now, although the Canadian History Hall has only been open since Canada Day, already it has attracted thousands of visitors to the museum, and while the museum is encouraging you to come and see it for yourself. Charlie Cenac, TWIN News, Gatineau.